King Charles entered the trustees' chamber, expecting clarification, perhaps even reassurance. Instead, he was handed the confirmation that changed everything. A royal legacy he believed still belonged within his reach had been reserved for the next generation, sealed beyond alteration, and protected by names that could not be ignored. In that moment, the king did not rage. He simply stared at the page as the silence around him became unbearable. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles lowered his eyes again, and the words seemed to grow heavier the longer he looked at them. The trustees, the appointed guardians responsible for protecting private family assets and making sure written instructions are followed, had formally confirmed the existence and force of Queen Elizabeth II's private Windsor Legacy Trust. That trust, a protected family arrangement created to preserve personal possessions, letters, memories, and symbolic royal items, had been reserved for Prince George, Princess Charlotte, Prince Louis, and Lady Louise Windsor. Charles was not given direct control. He was not given the power to redirect it. He was not even given the comfort of believing it could still be discussed. Camilla watched him from across the room, and she understood at once that this was not only about jewels, letters, archives, or household pieces. The queen consort could see the change in the king's face, the sudden stillness that comes when a wound lands too deep for anger. Charles had spent his life preparing to inherit duty, burden, and expectation, yet this confirmation told him that one of his mother's most personal legacies had been carried past him and placed into younger hands. Camilla did not interrupt. She knew the wrong word would only sharpen the silence. One trustee began reading the clause aloud, and every sentence struck like a door closing. The arrangement was not temporary. It was not informal. It was not a ceremonial gesture meant to be adjusted later. It was a protected generational transfer, written with enough care to survive pressure, grief, and royal disappointment. Then came the line that froze the room. The legacy was to pass untouched into the hands of the monarchy's future, not its present. Charles set the page down slowly, but his hand remained near it, as though part of him still refused to let go. William's name was not listed as a beneficiary, yet his shadow already fell across the decision. The future king had been positioned as guardian of the next generation's interest, a role that made him protector rather than receiver. Charles understood the danger immediately. This was no longer just a mother's final instruction. It was a family fault line, drawn between the monarch who ruled now and the children Elizabeth had chosen to shield. But before Charles could confront what had been taken from him, the palace had to face who had been chosen instead. The confirmation did not simply name assets. It named futures. Prince George, Princess Charlotte, Prince Louis, and Lady Louise Windsor were no longer distant figures in a family plan. They were suddenly the emotional center of a decision that reached beyond money, beyond jewels, beyond palace rooms. For Charles, every name on that page felt like a quiet reminder that the late queen had looked past him toward a monarchy he would never fully own. Charles felt the weight of George's name first, because George was not just a child in the family line. He was the future sovereign, the one expected to inherit the crown one day. And that meant every gift placed before him carried duty before comfort. The trust was not designed as a soft inheritance or a private reward. It was a preparation. It told the family that Elizabeth had not been thinking only about what should be preserved, but about who would be strong enough, one day, to carry it without turning it into another royal battle. Then came Charlotte, Louis, and Lady Louise, and the meaning grew sharper. Charlotte was not simply included as a daughter of the future king. Louis was not added as an afterthought. Louise was not placed there by accident. Each name carried a role, a burden, a quiet instruction from the late queen herself. The trustees made it clear that every beneficiary had been chosen with purpose, and the message underneath was impossible to miss. Elizabeth had built a moral map for the monarchy after her death, one that protected continuity through the young rather than power through the present. Charles struggled with that truth, because it reached deeper than law. His mother had trusted him with the crown, the throne, the ceremonies, and the burden of rule. Yet she had preserved her most intimate legacy for grandchildren and great-grandchildren. That contrast hurt. He was the king, but he was not the keeper of this final private confidence. He could govern the monarchy, but he could not touch the part of Elizabeth that she had chosen to pass forward untouched. And that difference left him exposed in a way no public crisis ever had. William read the confirmation separately, and his focus caught on Charlotte's name. He understood at once that this was not only a blessing, it was a burden placed early, a symbol that would follow his children before they were ready to understand it. William did not see victory in the document. He saw responsibility. He saw George being prepared for a future he could not escape. He saw Charlotte being trusted with memory. He saw Louis being drawn into the emotional architecture of a monarchy, still learning how to survive its own fractures. Lady Louise's inclusion unsettled the courtiers most of all. Her name proved that rank alone had not guided the Queen's hand. Elizabeth had chosen temperament, trust, loyalty, and private affection. That revelation changed the temperature inside the palace, because it meant the trust was not just a family arrangement. It was a judgment. It revealed who the late monarch believed could protect what mattered without demanding the spotlight. Camilla's reaction became impossible to ignore, as the trustees explained that certain objects were protected from entering her private household. The Queen Consort heard the boundary clearly. This legacy was not only being handed to the next generation, it was being shielded from the present one. And as the names settled over the room, one question began to burn louder than the rest. Why had the late Queen made this choice at all? Every royal rupture has a moment that people later pretend they did not see coming. This one began years earlier, not in a courtroom or a bank office, but after a ceremonial balcony appearance when Queen Elizabeth noticed a small exchange that others dismissed. Charles had turned away too quickly. Camilla had spoken too sharply. Charlotte had gone silent. And the monarch, watching from behind her composed expression, understood something permanent. Elizabeth carried that moment with her long after the ceremony ended, because it was not the brooch alone that unsettled her. It was what the brooch represented. A family brooch is more than jewelry inside palace life. It is a private symbol passed through memory, affection, duty, and belonging. Charlotte had asked to see it with the innocent curiosity of a child reaching toward history, but Camilla's answer cut the moment short. "Not for children," she had said, and the words stayed in the air longer than anyone expected. Charles treated the remark as practical. The Queen heard something colder. Charlotte's silence mattered, because it told Elizabeth what no formal briefing ever could. The young princess had not asked for possession. She had asked for connection. Louis, George, and Lady Louise were not present in the same way. Yet their future seemed to gather around that small exchange, because the late monarch understood how quickly children inside royal walls could learn that love came with gates around it. Camilla may have thought she was protecting tradition, but Elizabeth saw a warning. A legacy that could be turned into exclusion had to be protected before it became another weapon. Elizabeth later asked a senior aide to bring her private inventory files, and that request marked the first quiet step toward what would become the Windsor Legacy Trust. The Windsor Legacy Trust was a protected family arrangement meant to guard personal royal objects, letters, archive rights, and private symbols from being redirected by palace pressure. At first, the review looked ordinary. Files were opened, notes were compared, boxes were checked. But beneath the calm process, the Queen was making a decision that would outlive her voice. Charles never understood the full consequence of defending Camilla that day. He believed he was smoothing over a tense exchange, preventing a small family discomfort from becoming larger than it needed to be. But Elizabeth heard his defense as a sign that he had missed the heart of the matter. She did not argue. She did not correct him in public. She withdrew into silence, and that silence became more powerful than anger. That evening, Elizabeth sat with the brooch box and felt the sadness of a monarch who knew that memory could be lost long before an object disappeared. Later, the trustees would identify that balcony day exchange as the trigger that began the protective clauses for the next generation. A handwritten note from the Queen would carry the line that changed everything. Some legacies must be kept gentle until the young are strong enough to carry them. The backstory turned the trust from a legal arrangement into a maternal verdict, forcing Charles toward the confrontation he most wanted to avoid. But a verdict written in private becomes unbearable when the living are forced to answer for it. Face to face, the confrontation did not begin with shouting. It began with a chair scraping against the floor. Charles rose slowly, one hand pressed against the table, and asked the trustees whether they understood what they were saying to their king. The room froze, not because he threatened them, but because the pain in his voice revealed something far more dangerous. He felt judged not by law, but by his mother. Charles demanded an explanation that went beyond wording, signatures, and sealed instructions. He wanted to know how a reigning monarch could be left without oversight of a royal legacy tied so closely to the crown's image. The crown, in plain terms, meant the authority and public identity of the monarchy itself, the symbol that turned private family choices into national meaning. To Charles, that made the trust impossible to separate from his reign. He was not asking for a trinket. He was asking why the emotional inheritance of his mother had been placed outside his reach, while he carried the burden of her throne. The trustees did not bend. One of them answered with the careful firmness of a man who knew every word could wound the king. Further, this legacy, he explained, was personal property and protected family stewardship, not an active instrument of state authority. Family stewardship meant the duty to guard private royal possessions for future generations, not to use them for present power. Charles heard the distinction, but he did not accept the comfort inside it. In his heart, it still sounded like exclusion. Then his grief broke through the formality. Charles asked why Elizabeth had trusted children with what she would not entrust to him. The question did not sound royal. It sounded human. It sounded like a son reaching for an answer no trustee could soften. Camilla watched the exchange with growing tension because she understood that the king was no longer fighting a legal point. He was standing before strangers, asking them to explain his mother's final confidence. A senior trustee lowered his voice and gave the answer that changed the air. The late queen believed the next generation needed protection from adult rivalries. The words landed heavily because they did not accuse anyone directly, yet they seemed to touch everyone in the room. Charles fell silent. Camilla stiffened. The trustees held their ground, and suddenly the trust no longer looked like a guarded inheritance. It looked like a shield built against the very battles now unfolding around it. The final revelation came with devastating precision. Any attempt to challenge the trust would trigger public disclosure of Elizabeth's written reasoning. That warning was not a threat. It was a boundary. If Charles pushed, the world would learn why the Queen had acted. If Camilla pushed, the barred household items would become part of the story. Several pieces had been specifically protected from entering her private use, and the meaning was impossible to ignore. Charles remained standing, but the authority in the room had shifted. The trustees had not defeated him with force. They had trapped him with his mother's own words. Then came the next move. Quiet, but explosive. William was summoned not as a beneficiary, but as protector of the children's interests. And when William entered the room, the argument stopped being about documents and became a test of blood, loyalty, and restraint. William did not arrive triumphantly. He arrived carefully, like a man stepping into a room already filled with broken glass. Charles looked at him not as an heir, but as the person now standing between him and his mother's final wishes. The trustees had power, but William had responsibility, and responsibility, in that room, became more difficult to challenge than authority itself. William understood the danger before anyone explained it to him. This was not a simple family disagreement. It was a question of who had the right to protect the legacy of the late queen when that legacy had been placed beyond the king's reach. The trustees clarified his role with careful precision. William had been appointed guardian advisor over the younger beneficiaries, meaning he was the adult figure trusted to guide and protect their interests until each child or named family member reached the age or status required to receive their assigned portion. That explanation mattered because it made him powerful without making him the owner. Charles heard every word as if it had been chosen to wound him. William could not claim the legacy for himself. He could not wear it, sell it, move it, or use it to build his own authority. But he could protect it from interference, delay, pressure, or reinterpretation. And that was the part Charles could not escape. His son had been placed in the narrow space between a reigning monarch and a dead mother's instruction. The king's authority filled the room, but Elizabeth's trust stood behind William, like something colder, older, and harder to break. Charles finally asked the question that had been building inside him since the first page was read. Did William intend to stand against his own father? The prince did not answer quickly. That silence hurt more than a sharp reply ever could. When William spoke, his voice carried no victory, only resolve. He said he was not standing against Charles. He was standing for the children. The words were simple. That made them devastating. William's restraint cut deeper than defiance, because it showed Charles something he was not ready to see. The future king had already accepted Elizabeth's judgment as final. He was not asking for permission to protect George, Charlotte, Louis, and Lady Louise. He was accepting the duty that had been placed before him. The trustees then presented the sealed guardian clause, a protected instruction stating that no reigning monarch could redirect the trust once the confirmation had been activated. The phrase, "no reigning monarch," changed the air. It did not name Charles, but everyone knew who would feel its force. Then came the second clause, and the shock widened. Lady Louise held independent recognition inside the trust, meaning her role could not be reduced, absorbed, or quietly folded into the wishes of a senior royal household. Her inclusion was not symbolic. It was secure. Camilla heard that part clearly, and something in her expression closed. Before the meeting ended, she left the room, and the sound of the closing door carried more weight than anything she could have said. But palace decisions do not remain inside palace walls for long, and the first casualty was not legal power. It was trust. After the meeting, Camilla did not walk into a public corridor. She entered a side sitting room, closed the door, and remained there while aides waited outside, pretending not to listen. For the first time, the decision had moved beyond Charles's devastation. It had reached her. The trust did not accuse her openly, yet every protected object, every barred transfer, every careful clause seemed to point in her direction. Camilla understood the meaning before anyone had to explain it again. The Windsor Legacy Trust was no longer only a private family arrangement. It had become a boundary inside the palace itself. Aides were instructed to separate trust-controlled items from the household inventories, linked to Charles and Camilla, and that mattered, because household inventories are the first or official lists that decide which possessions belong under daily royal control and which must remain protected elsewhere. What had once seemed available through the king's discretion was now being pulled away, item by item, from the reach of the present reign. Staff moved quietly, but the silence made the action feel even sharper. Archive boxes were taken from places that had long been assumed safe under Charles's authority. Jewel ledgers were marked for review. Personal letters tied to the late queen's private reign were removed from areas connected to the king and the queen consort. Camilla heard enough to know what was happening. Elizabeth's legacy was not simply passing forward. It was being guarded against absorption, guarded against pressure, guarded against the soft power of palace habit. Camilla sat alone after the door closed, gripping the arm of a chair as the truth settled around her. No trustee had accused her by name. No lawyer had raised his voice. Yet the effect was unmistakable. The late queen had drawn a line, and Camilla was standing on the wrong side of it. That realization wounded her in a way public criticism never could, because public criticism could be dismissed as noise. This was different. This came from within the family's deepest memory. Charles found her later, but comfort did not come easily. He was wounded too, though not in the same way. The king had been denied control by his mother's final wishes. Camilla had been denied closeness by the meaning of those wishes. He wanted to reassure her, but every reassurance sounded weak against the document that had just been confirmed. Charles could defend her, before courtiers, before commentators, even before his own household. He could not defend her against Elizabeth's handwriting. Then another discovery tightened the fallout. An aide found that the late queen's private instructions included a specific list of items to be preserved for Charlotte and Lady Louise. Charlotte's name carried the weight of childhood protected. Louise's name carried the weight of quiet loyalty rewarded. The message was not broad. It was personal. And because it was personal, it was dangerous. A palace solicitor warned Charles's office that any leak of resistance would make the monarchy look as if it were fighting children over inheritance. That warning changed everything. The king could not challenge the trust without appearing smaller than the future he was meant to protect. Camilla could not object without confirming the very tension Elizabeth had tried to contain. Then William requested one private meeting with Charles, without trustees, aides, lawyers, or Camilla present. And in that private meeting, father and son finally stopped speaking through institutions and began speaking through pain. The turning point came in a smaller room, with no polished table between them and no witnesses to soften the truth. Charles stood by the window, still carrying the posture of a king, while William remained near the door, cautious and grief-stricken. For once, they were not monarch and heir. They were a son mourning his mother, and a father realizing his own child would not undo her final wish. William chose his words with care, because one wrong sentence could turn grief into another battle. He told Charles that protecting the trust was not rebellion, it was obedience. The Windsor Legacy Trust had become more than a guarded collection of jewels, letters, and private royal objects. It was Elizabeth's final design for the family, a way of keeping certain memories safe until the Dopif, younger generation could receive them without being crushed by the rivalries around them. William did not speak like a challenger. He spoke like a man carrying an instruction he had not asked for, but could not abandon. Charles listened, and for the first time, his anger began to lose its shape. He admitted that the trustees' confirmation had felt like being passed over by his mother after a lifetime of waiting. That confession changed the room. It stripped away the crown, the titles, and the careful language. Charles had inherited the throne, yet this private legacy had moved around him, as if Elizabeth had separated duty from trust. He could bear criticism. He could bear pressure. But the thought that his mother had made this choice without asking him struck a place no public challenge had ever reached. William did not soften the truth. He told his father that George, Charlotte, Louis, and Lady Louise should not inherit the bitterness of the present generation. The words were not cruel, but they were sharp enough to make Charles flinch. William understood that success inside the monarchy often came wrapped in suffering. Every crown carried a cost. Every gift carried a shadow. If Elizabeth had reserved this legacy for the young, perhaps she had done it because she feared what adult pride could do to innocent hands. Then William revealed something Charles had not expected. He had only known fragments of the arrangement before the trustees confirmed it. He had not walked into the crisis with full knowledge or hidden triumph. He too had been shaken by the detail, by the care, by the deliberate way his grandmother had shielded the children. That admission mattered, because it proved William was not using the trust against Charles. He was discovering its weight at the same time he was being asked to defend it. Charles reached for the confirmation again, and the silence returned. He read Charlotte's name, then George's, then Louis's, then Lady Louise's, and something inside him seemed to settle. At last, he said quietly that Elizabeth always did know where the future was safest. It was not surrender in weakness. It was surrender to a truth he could no longer fight. Yet beyond the room, the palace was already preparing a public statement. And the world would not receive it as a simple administrative notice. Because once the announcement reached the public, the monarchy discovered that the nation had already chosen what the story meant. By morning, the private wound had become a national image. One newspaper front page carried a stark photograph of Charles looking down from a palace window beside the headline, "The Queen's legacy passes him by." It was cruel, simple, and impossible to ignore. Outside Buckingham Palace, a small crowd gathered in silence, not in anger, but in recognition that a generational handover had just been made visible. Charles saw the coverage before the palace finished measuring its own response. The sound was muted, but the damage did not need volume. The headline had said what the trustees never dared to say in such brutal words. The late Queen's most personal confidence had moved beyond the king and into the hands of the future. The palace statement tried to keep the language calm, confirming that the Windsor Legacy Trust would be administered according to Elizabeth's instructions for George, Charlotte, Louis, and Lady Louise. Yet calm words could not hide the force of what had happened. A trust, in simple terms, was a protected legal arrangement used to preserve certain assets for named people, and this one had become a symbol far larger than jewels, letters, or private family objects. William watched the same morning unfold from a different place of pain. He did not see a victory for his branch of the family. He saw his children becoming symbols before they fully understood what had been placed upon. George was now being discussed as the child prepared for duty. Charlotte was being described as the keeper of memory. Louis was being folded into a story about continuity. Lady Louise's name was being repeated as proof that quiet loyalty had mattered to Elizabeth. William knew the public was not only reacting to a document, they were reacting to a transfer of emotional authority. Broadcasters quickly turned the confirmation into something bigger than palace administration. One respected presenter said on air, "This is not abdication of power. It is inheritance of trust." And the phrase spread because it captured what the nation already felt. Charles had not lost the crown. He had not lost his reign, but he had lost control over a piece of his mother's own legacy that people believed carried her deepest instincts. That distinction mattered, because monarchy survives not only through law, but through feeling, and feeling had moved. Camilla understood the danger in that movement. The Queen Consort knew the public would read the protected items, the barred transfers, and the children's names as more than careful planning. They would read them as meaning Charles could survive criticism, but meaning was harder to defeat. Once the nation decided what a royal moment represented, even the palace struggled to pull it back. By midday, the crowd outside Buckingham Palace had become the image the monarchy could not control. No chanting, no fury, just people standing beneath history, watching a family's private wound become a public lesson. Charles faced one final choice. He could resist the meaning of the trust and look smaller than the future it protected, or he could accept it with dignity. And when the final decision came, it did not arrive as a legal statement, but as a father's surrender to the future. In the end, Charles did not defeat the trust. He did not challenge the trustees. He did not drag his mother's final wishes into a public war. Instead, he stood before the family, looked toward the younger generation, and accepted the one truth the entire crisis had forced upon him. Some legacies are not meant to comfort the present. They are meant to protect the future from it. Charles made the acceptance formal, but nothing about it felt easy. The trustees' confirmation would stand, and the Windsor Legacy Trust would remain untouched for George, Charlotte, Louis, and Lady Louise. A trust, in simple terms, is a protected arrangement that keeps certain assets under careful control until the chosen people can receive them. This one mattered because it carried more than value. It carried Elizabeth's private judgment, her memories, her letters, her symbols, and her belief that the youngest branches of the family needed protection from the storms created by the older ones. The palace moved quickly after Charles accepted the outcome. Officials finalized the separation of trust assets from the king's household, ending any uncertainty over who controlled what. The king's household meant the offices, staff, and possessions connected to Charles's daily reign, and the separation mattered because it made the boundary real. No quiet transfer, no soft reinterpretation, no future adjustment hidden behind palace language. The legacy would not be absorbed into the present reign. It would wait for the future, exactly as Elizabeth had designed. Charles felt the conclusion not as a victory, but as obedience. He had been king in public, yet in this private matter he was still a son answering his mother's final instruction. That was the wound and the lesson. He had wanted control because control felt like dignity. But now he understood that dignity sometimes meant stepping back. Elizabeth had not left him powerless. She had left him with the hardest kind of power, the power to accept a decision that hurt him and still protect the people it was meant to shield. William thanked Charles privately, and the moment carried no triumph. The prince understood what his father had given up. He knew the king could have resisted, delayed, or turned the matter into a public fight. Instead, Charles chose restraint. William's relief was quiet, because the burden was still heavy. George, Charlotte, Louis, and Lady Louise had inherited more than objects. They had inherited trust, expectation, and the shadow of a queen who believed the future had to be guarded before it could be crowned. Camilla received the outcome quietly. The queen consort recognized that Elizabeth's boundary would remain part of palace life. Whether spoken aloud or not, certain rooms, objects, and memories would never fully enter her reach, and that truth would follow her in silence. Yet the final revelation was not cruelty. Elizabeth's legacy was never designed to punish Charles or humiliate Camilla. It was designed to preserve innocence, continuity, and trust beyond adult rivalries. This moment changed the monarchy because its emotional center shifted. Charles remained king, but Elizabeth's most personal confidence belonged to the next generation. His devastation did not disappear. It became duty. His disappointment did not win. It became acceptance. The story ends with Charles standing not as the man who lost a legacy, but as the king who finally understood why it had to pass beyond him. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.